Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking MLS, of course, as it rolls on, including El Tráfico. We'll take a look at the UCL final, the CCL semifinal, American Scandal podcast, Jim Curtin, the Loons, the Crew rebrand, Twitter, British expats, Sons of Sam, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, May 10th of the year 2021?
I am doing well, particularly after finding out this past week that we're going to have an action-packed summer ahead of international soccer.
Yes, we made a big announcement. Look, you brought it up, so you talk about it for a second. I'll give you the honors.
Well, we already had the Gold Cup. We knew that. And then Fox announced that it's acquired the rights to the Copa America as well. So that tournament comes first. It begins June 13th, ends July 10th, which is the same day the Gold Cup begins. And then the Gold Cup runs from July 10 until August 1st. So back-to-back international tournaments on Fox Sports this summer.
Well, the summer of soccer is on. And I couldn't be happier. I'm so excited about it. We've done Copa Americas in the past. I played in a couple of Copa Americas. They are really, as you know, interesting tournaments, and we're going to blow it out. And so whether it's the Gold Cup or Copa America and MLS throughout it all, obviously qualifying coming this fall, women's national team, all sorts of different stuff that's going on when it comes to soccer over at Fox. So we're really happy and proud of the fact that we got this summer of soccer lined up. So that's going to be cool. Mosse, anything interest you this week in terms of your viewing or listening pleasure out there? I got some things if you don't.
Another strong episode I thought of Mayor of Easttown, which is this HBO show I'm very invested in. And then the only other thing is I finally got around to watching the Ken Burns Ernest Hemingway documentary, which came out recently on PBS. I had recorded it, but was so busy I hadn't gotten a chance to watch it. But in the past few nights, I watched it. And by the way, I keep saying Ken Burns. It's Ken Burns and Lynn Novick, who is his longtime collaborator, this woman who's very talented. And lately, he's actually been giving her some recognition. And these documentaries have been titled by Ken Burns and Lynn Novick. And she's getting to do the promotional interviews with him as well. And I've been very impressed with her. So they knocked out of the park again. I love all those documentaries, and this one was very good as well. Fascinating figure, obviously, and they did a good job with it.
Well, she's the John Oates to the Daryl Hall that Ken Burns is. I get it, and important. Okay, so let's see a couple of things. I know a couple of weeks ago we had talked about some when we come on here at the top about possibly giving some different things, except not just viewing stuff. So from a viewing perspective, first and foremost. The Sons of Sam, which is the documentary on the investigation and as it surrounds a investigative journalist out there in investigating if there was more to the David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, serial murder that happened back in the 70s. Fascinating stuff. Doesn't really necessarily answer questions or all of the questions out there, but it's a really interesting documentary if you want to check that out. So I like that. But I know people have asked me about podcasts at different points. I watch American Scandal, which is a podcast. I think it's into its like 26th season right now, and I'm not going to read off all of the different subjects that they have covered, but I just think it's one of the best podcasts out there in terms of episodal and they go into it with the right mix of both the facts, but also the entertainment part of it. And they do a really good job. Lindsey Graham, who is the host of it, I think is really good at putting those together. So definitely check that out. When it comes to actual, let's say music, let's see. I think I had a band here. Yeah. Beach Friends, which is a group of 3 young men. I think they're doing some really interesting stuff out there. So check those out. Those are a couple of things that are on my radar right now when it comes to things that I'm watching, things that I'm listening to. And then finally, because I don't know if we're going to get to it here in our show. As a matter of fact, I don't think we were. So I want to put it at the top of the show. That's congratulations to our U.S. men's futsal national team. They qualified for the upcoming World Cup and showed certainly the men's national team how it's done when it comes to qualifying. So congratulations to them for qualifying. They ended up finishing second in the Concacaf Championship, losing to Costa Rica 3-2, but they'd already qualified with their performance before. So that's great for them. You know, when we talk about the futsal team or the beach team, or the para team, you know, and these extended national teams, as they call them, oftentimes they don't get the attention and ultimately the respect that they deserve. And it's really interesting to me in this time when we talk so much about equity and equality and inclusiveness, that the national teams and the extended national teams, which are men and women performing at the highest level of the sport, and that it happens on sand or it happens on, a hardwood floor or anything like that, shouldn't change the fact that they are representing our country. And in this case, our national team qualified for a World Cup, and they should be celebrated. And if you truly believe that the women's national team and the men's national team are doing what I just said, then you should also believe that the men and women that are doing it for our other extended national teams are also representing our country at the highest level. And I guess you also should have to believe that they should be treated equitably and equally. So we'll see how that goes. Regardless, they're going to a World Cup, and that is a good thing for soccer. And as I said, whether it's soccer, men's, women's, or co-ed naked, as long as people are kicking a ball, and in this case, kicking a ball and representing what I feel is the greatest country in the world, they deserve respect, they deserve attention, and they deserve congratulations. So congratulations to them. Mossy, anything to add before we light the candle?
That's it.
All right, let's jump right into all the MLS action that went on this past week. We were knee deep in it, and let's start with El Tráfico, okay? Because that happened on Saturday. We had, when I say we, over at Fox, we had the privilege and the pleasure of broadcasting yet another edition of El Tráfico between Los Angeles Galaxy and LAFC. This was also unique because it was the first time in a long time that we were actually on site. And so long that once we got to Dignity Health over there, formerly Home Depot, I've lost track of all the different names over there, but the LA Galaxy Stadium there, we figured out that the last time we were there was like the fall of 2019, which is amazing because this is a place that I've spent so much time over my life, and to not have been there for so long and to get back and to be in that environment. We had the studio on site, as I said, at the stadium, and to be there with fans. It was absolutely wonderful. It warmed the cockles of my heart to see everybody, even people screaming and yelling at me and calling me names. It still made me feel great to be there and to see everybody enjoying it in that communal type of aspect. And it wasn't full. It wasn't a full stadium, but it was loud and it was exciting. And it made me feel positive and happy that we are heading in that type of direction and that there'll be bigger crowds and more opportunities for us to actually get on site and to do these things. And then we had El Tráfico. All right, Mossy, you were during El Tráfico working with us, but you were working remotely from back at the Fox Studios, right?
Correct.
What were your first takes? And for anybody that missed it, the latest edition of El Tráfico, the Los Angeles Galaxy came up and won 2-1 against LAFC. What were your initial thoughts on the latest edition of El Tráfico?
Well, it was very much a smash and grab. LAFC were on the front foot for most of the game, but the Galaxy got a terrific performance from their goalkeeper, Jonathan Bond, who's been a very good signing so far. And then some timely moments from Chicharito, a goal and an assist to his Mexican compadre, Jonathan Dos Santos. And so they get out of there with a 2-1 victory. Not bad for the second most relevant club in Los Angeles, according to you.
So for those that may have missed the pregame show, the producers came to me and we talk about different things that we are going to do. And we decided that, we would look at it from a LA Galaxy versus LAFC perspective relative to the actual city of Los Angeles, where we are broadcasting from and where we live. And the the impact that both of these teams have made. Because look, while LAFC is only 4 years old, into its fourth year, it came in with all guns blazing, and there was the thought that this competition was going to be good for soccer and good for both teams. But in the recent years, and since the birth of LAFC, the reality is that the Galaxy hasn't kept up, and they haven't been as good as LAFC. And so I went through, and I had 5 different criteria there that I decided who was winning this battle for LA. And so we did that on our pregame show. It's out on social media. You can check it out on my Twitter feed there. But it at times riled up, angered, irked some folks out there, especially Galaxy folks. And I prefaced the segment by saying, "Don't kill the messenger." And Janet Jackson, who we know and love, told us so eloquently, "What have you done for me lately?" And that was where I was coming from. Because look, if you're just gonna talk about the success of the last 26 years of the LA Galaxy versus a team that's only been around for the last 3 seasons, that's not going to do it. And so I was looking at it much more from a recent type of perspective. So when it comes to stars, that was the first one. Stars, give it to the Los Angeles Galaxy, because you're talking about, just in the last couple of years, you got obviously Chicharito, Zlatan, the Dos Santos, Ashley Cole, and over on the LAFC side, it's basically Carlos Vela. Okay. Success. Okay. Now, this is where a lot of people started to scream and yell when I talked about success. When you talk about the LA Galaxy, they have missed 3 of the last 4 years when it comes to making the playoffs, as opposed to LAFC, which have won a Supporters Shield. They have gone to a final of a Concacaf Champions League. They've made the playoffs all 3 years in their existence. And by the way, when they won that Supporters Shield, it was the best regular season in MLS history. So I gave LAFC the win in that column. Stadium. Look, I love Dignity Health. I love that environment. I was there with a shovel when we first broke ground. It is a very different type of experience than up at the bank, where it is much more intimate. I think it's louder. And I think, yes, it's up in actual LA. And I know people talk about that. And I mentioned that too. And by a hair, I give the stadium to LAFC. And it might change if the Galaxy was and had been better over the last few years. But I think that's one that we can certainly debate. The brand, the actual brand, and there's no scientific type of thing that I've come up with. It's just living in Los Angeles and seeing a lot of LAFC merchandise out there and hats. And somebody took me to task and said, "Yeah, but if you actually ask those people that are wearing the LAFC stuff, none of them are actually fans." And my point was, well, you know what? That's actually another check in the column for LAFC, because it means that the brand has resonated so much and is so cool and is something that people want to wear that even have no connection when it comes to the actual to soccer. And don't think for a second that doesn't matter. And then it gets down to relevance. And that really, yes, you could talk about the 26 years that they have, but what LAFC has done in a very short period of time, I think at this moment, they are the relevant team in Los Angeles, which was where the conversation was coming from, as opposed to globally, which I still think the LA Galaxy, no, I know that the LA Galaxy brand resonates globally. When you're talking just here in LA, that's where I think LAFC gets the nod here. Mossy, what were your thoughts? Because I know that people probably come to you at different times and complain to you about things that I say. And I appreciate and love the fact that you at least withstand. I'm not saying you defend me or anything like that, but you at least listen and withstand when people come and complain to you. What were your thoughts on that segment? Because you didn't have anything necessarily to do with that segment when we put it on the air.
As I made sure to point out on Twitter when people were trying to harm me with that. No, I get it. There are some Lakers-Clippers parallels in that the Lakers had a down period there in which they missed the playoffs several years in a row, and it coincided with a period in which the Clippers were very good. They had Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and Lob City and all that, and were the much more exciting team. And yet the Clippers never got over the hump in the playoffs, never won a title. So Lakers fans could poo-poo that whole period and say that, no, they hadn't really turned the tables, because you have to crown that sort of period with actually a significant title. And now the Lakers have come out on the other side of their struggles with LeBron and are back to being the Lakers again, and feel like the team in this town again. So I think that's what Galaxy fans are pointing to, that LAFC still haven't actually won anything to crown this very successful period they've had. And they feel like the Galaxy are going to get things figured out here, possibly even this season. And so things will return to their natural order. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. I continue to say about LAFC, to me, they are victims of their own success. It's amazing to me that a franchise that's only been in existence for 3 seasons prior to this one, and people talk about it like, are they finally going to win MLS Cup, instead of focusing on the positive? Like you said, the fact that they set a points record for an expansion team. They set a single season MLS points record the following campaign, winning the Supporters Shield. As you mentioned, got to a CCL final. The fact that they've been able to step in and be contenders right away and play the best soccer I've ever seen any team play in MLS, to me, that should still be the story. And instead, the narrative has become the fact that they haven't won MLS Cup and they already have this hanging over them. Although I will say, the fact that guys like Rossi and Atuesta are starting to attract a lot of interest does make me think the clock is ticking a little bit on this iteration of LAFC. There's a little bit of a last dance like quality to this season. So from that standpoint, there is some pressure on them.
Sure, but the irritation that this caused within the Galaxy folks there, I get it, I understand it. It's your team. It's very personal to you. And by the way, it's personal to me. But again, don't kill the messenger. And I think a lot of the Galaxy folks, when something like this comes out, they are living in and living off the past. Okay, and that's not the way that I look at the Galaxy. I am immensely proud of the work that I did when it was either on the field as a player or in the front office. And I'm not proud, obviously, of the team that wasn't good, but I'm proud of a lot of the work that we did there. But when people were fair with their criticism, we used it to motivate us. And that's what I think has been disappointing, is that with the arrival of LAFC, it doesn't seem to have motivated the LA Galaxy to be better. And ultimately, that's what this is about, is that I want the LA Galaxy to be good. And I'm not just going to sit around here and say that they are, because I have a history when it comes to it. And by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, I played for the Galaxy. I was the president and general manager for a number of years, during which the team was not very good on the field, and ultimately I got fired by the Galaxy. So you can factor that in when we're talking about the Galaxy at any time, including right now. But that doesn't mean that I don't want the Galaxy to do well. I want them to do well. I want them to be pissed off. I want this to light a fire under the Galaxy on and off the field. I want them to attempt each and every day to go out there and crush the opposition within your city, that is Los Angeles, to regain that super club status within Los Angeles right now. Don't think that this is something that I like, but this is fun. Now on the field, Mossy, to your point, I don't think that there's anybody in the Galaxy organization, including Greg Vanney, who will look at this and say this is sustainable. All right. Great result against obviously your biggest rival. And so that's something to take heart in, that you were able to find a way to win. But there were times out there where there was only one team of quality playing. And I think Bob Bradley, he doesn't have any hair, but he's certainly probably pulling out whatever hair he may have. Because he looks at this game and says, how did we not find a way, at the very least, to come away with a point? And, that's a problem in a certain sense for the LA Galaxy. However, I think that Greg Vanney has this team heading and trending in the right direction. Back to an elite team? No. Okay. I think they still struggle defensively, and that might change going forward. And I don't think that they are an elite team yet in MLS, but they're certainly better than they were last year. And it looks like that they are heading in the right direction. But they can't do what they did against the LAFC and expect to win a lot of games going forward. And he will have told them that. But to the victor go the spoils. And when you are the LA Galaxy at a time when you are struggling and you want to point to something where you're growing, another El Tráfico win. Obviously you take that and you celebrate that. And I think the Galaxy should celebrate that win, because there was some fight. There was some spirit. There was some personality. And let's not bury the lead here. Chicharito scored again. And by the way, assisted on the winning goal. And that is a good thing because you're definitely going to need Chicharito being positive and firing on all cylinders going forward. But it was a fun environment to be in. It was a good game. The home team won. There will be more El Tráficos going forward, but all the other stuff that swirls around it, it's fun to talk about. But if you're an LA Galaxy fan, you'll say, look at the scoreboard, and it's 2-1 in favor of the LA Galaxy until the next El Tráfico. Anything else, Mossy, on El Tráfico?
No, yeah, I mean, just echo your thoughts. I mean, what I hear from the Galaxy camp, as you know, I have 1 or 2 friends in that organization who are avid listeners of this podcast, and they tell me to tell you that they signed like 13 new players this offseason, hired a new coach, and so give them time. They know right now the results are better than the performances, but they think their performances will come too. And once Greg Vanney kind of puts all the pieces together,
okay, I understand that. Give them time. If you really are the super club that you're crying over right now, that you're not being called, or that I am not painting you with, all right, that's not what super clubs do. Okay. Yes, they respect and they honor the past and the history that they have, but they don't live in it. Doesn't matter what you did. Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? All right. If you can't be the super club now, then don't expect me to coddle you and say, oh, it's okay, I'll wait around. We'll have patience. No, that's not the way that this club since 1996 has built itself, has marketed itself. You want to be something else and something different? All right, fine. But let everybody know that identity of the LA Galaxy as the super club, all right, spending lots of money, lots of stars, and incredible success, team that as many people hate as love. If that's gone, if that's dead, fine. But let me know, okay? Because that's not the Galaxy that I signed up for. That's not the Galaxy that I played for. That's not the Galaxy that I worked for. All right. Anyway, and by the way, and there's, as I said, the Galaxy team on the field was not good at the time that I worked for it, which is why I got fired. All right. Other results over here. I mean, we got to go back actually to Friday night because there was a game between RSL and San Jose, and it's a weird game where one of the great goals that you're probably going to see this year was scored by the home team. Rubio Rubin scored a wonderful bicycle kick. He took it off his chest and then turned, and it was just a wonderful thing. And he continues to be a revelation and this rebirth and worth the price of admission. However, when you are in a game where you have, talk about greats and legends, Chris Wondolowski sitting, waiting in the weeds, waiting to strike, and then gets put in as Matias Almeida did, anything could happen. And that's exactly what happened. Chris Wondolowski came in, scored 2 goals. San Jose ends up getting the win. So you have this wonderful goal from Rubio Rubin, and you should check it out if you haven't. It's wonderful. But then you have Chris Wondolowski basically taking all the headlines, and rightfully so. Here is this player who is in the golden years, in the twilight of his career, and yet came on and turned back time, if you will. And by the way, if you're RSL, it's Chris Wondolowski. All right, maybe you should find a way to get close to him. All right, he is one of the great goal scorers in Major League Soccer history, if not the greatest goal scorer. And I know numbers dictate that he is in Major League Soccer history. And it was amazing to see. Ultimately, a great moment for Chris Wondolowski, but also a great moment for San Jose, which continues to find a way to get results. And this one on the road against RSL, who had not lost yet in Major League Soccer. So I wanted to make sure I mention that before we go on to some other scores. Anything on that game, Mossy?
Yeah, I also find the Rubio Rubin story to be remarkable. Here's a guy who had tremendous success for the U.S. at youth level, got some caps at senior level, was once considered a top prospect at that center forward position, didn't quite pan out for him there, and now he's exploring playing for Guatemala. And at club level, he had spent most of his career in Europe, and now at the age of 25, finds his way to MLS. And is off to a tremendous start this season. 3 goals, 2 assists in the first 3 games. And yeah, that was an incredible bicycle kick he connected on. But yeah, on Wando, a lot of talk about his legacy in the last couple of days. I want to get your thoughts. First off, when you think Chris Wondolowski, how much do you think about the Belgium miss? Does that bother you, or that doesn't even enter your mind? He's done so many good things that overshadow that. And number two, when you look at his career, there's some people that say, well, he's a bit of a compiler. He's been consistently pretty good for a lot of years, and so his totals are impressive, but he was never a great striker in this league, never the best center forward in MLS, never had the kinds of seasons that guys like Joseph Martinez and Zlatan have had. So when you sort of put Chris Wondolowski's career in sort of historical context, what do you think of it?
There's a part of me that certainly feels bad for Chris Wondolowski, because whenever you bring up his name, you're obviously going to bring up the miss in the World Cup. And he understands that. He gets it. Is it fair? No, but soccer isn't fair. Life isn't fair. The irony is that Chris Wondolowski's gift and skill, if you will, is making people forget about him, or ignore him, or devalue him. And yet we can never, and we will never forget the miss. And you know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about it in the context of Chris Wondolowski. But his movement in the box, his ability to finish, is a product of hard work, obviously DNA and good genes in the ability to stay healthy. And he understands the mathematics and the angles of that box, which is where he does all of the work. He is and should be celebrated, not just as a great goal scorer, but as a great person and an incredible player that has benefited this league in so many ways. Is he prototypical? No. I mean, is he the best athlete out there? I think he would let you know. And as somebody who can't touch their toes, he's a kindred spirit. So he does what is the most difficult thing to do in our sport, which is to score goals. And he's done it at a historic rate. And I don't think he's not a big personality. He doesn't always put himself out there. And that's not his fault. That's just the way that it is. And I think he will be remembered, but he won't be remembered in the way or in the amount that I think what he has done deserves. And that's a pity. There's no fix to it. It's just the way that life sometimes works. Armasi, other games over here that you want to go to, because I mean, we can look. Philadelphia beat Chicago. Philadelphia went to Chicago and won. It's Chicago, and it's Philadelphia. The Red Bulls with a win. Chris Armas, he's really struggling right now up there. Well, not up there, but with Toronto in his new job up there. And 17-year-old Caden Clark scores again. Not a banger, but scores again against Red Bull. And these young players are using this platform, this opportunity, and this spotlight, and they continue to do it, seems, every single week, and some of the same ones over and over again. So that's great for Caden Clark. That's great for Red Bulls. Not so great for Toronto. Columbus, defending MLS Cup champions. They got themselves a win in DC, but it was against in Columbus against DC. But like I said, it's against DC, and DC is not good right now. And Columbus had 2 own goals, but they will take it without a problem. Nashville over New England. New England was cruising, and Nashville came out. This looked more like the Nashville that I think we kind of saw emerge last year, where they whereas the beginning of this season they didn't quite look at it, but this against a very good New England team so far. Well done. A Canadian battle between Vancouver and Montreal. Vancouver wins 2-0. Dallas down there in the Battle of Texas, 1-1. Orlando, Nani scoring another goal. Speaking of bangers, I mean, there are just some great goals so far in Major League Soccer. Nani just continues to do that. Orlando 1-1 against NYC. We talked about El Tráfico and Colorado and Minnesota. And we do have to definitely talk about the situation going on when it comes to Minnesota. Minnesota went to Colorado, went to altitude down there against the Rapids. And at least for the first part of the game, we thought, okay, Minnesota's finally back. They'd started out 0-3. And all right, Minnesota's finally back. They go up 2-0 in Colorado. All right, Minnesota's back. They finally got everything sorted out. They've spent money. They have new players. They're kicking on from where they left off last year, which was very, very good and positive. And then the Loons conspired to completely fall apart and let Colorado come back and win 3-2, which puts Minnesota, and by the way, Colorado folks are out there going to get angry. Congratulations, you won. But the story really is Minnesota and the Loons. 0-4 right now. And when it comes to Adrian Heath over there, I would think he's on the hot seat, but I don't have any inside information. But this is not a good start. This is not a good look for the Loons as an organization, and this is not a good look for Adrian Heath right now. Mossy, I know I hit a bunch of stuff there. You want to go back and hit some stuff?
Oh, a couple of things. Seattle with a nice win away to Portland. A game I am looking forward to on Wednesday. There's a midweek round in MLS. Is Seattle will be away to San Jose. Those are the top two teams in the West standings. But I want to go back. You mentioned Columbus beat DC United. Was that the Columbus Crew or Columbus SC?
All right, you want to get into it now? So we're, as we said, we record this on a Monday. So we're coming on air right now, and news broke over the last, 24, 48 hours that there's nothing in U.S. soccer that we like more than a rebrand. And so evidently there is, by the time you're listening to this, it could have been announced already by Columbus that it is going to go forward being called just Columbus SC. I'm assuming the SC is for soccer club. And the Crew part, which we know folks fought so hard to retain in the Save the Crew campaign, is going to be a nickname, but not official. Okay, so they're not completely disavowing the Crew part of it when it comes to the Columbus Crew, but it's not going to be in any official capacity there. We also come to find out that they are actually rebranding. The look, the mark, the logo, whatever you want to call it, the crest is going to change. And you can find it out there on social media, or at least rumored to be what it is. And as we say each and every time, there is no way in hell that you can possibly please everybody when you do a rebrand, especially when you have a core group of supporters who are so connected and so emotional and so passionate, maybe even more so because of the history of what's happened over the last couple of years with Columbus and the supporters there. There's no way you're going to please them. And so then the question is, well, were they involved or weren't they involved? And in light of what's happened over the last couple of weeks with the way that supporters look at these teams, that's a legitimate question. But there's also, as I said before, this growing sense of entitlement. And I know that that's a pejorative, and I know people, will bristle when you say something like that. But it still is difficult for me to understand, and maybe it's just me. It's difficult for me to understand how so many supporters feel that they are entitled to be privy and part of decisions that businesses are making right now. And I know it's personal. Like I said, I know that there is a connection. Like, I have incredible emotion and passion and connection to bands and music out there. And if they were to do things, it would never occur to me that I should be involved in it. I'll either like it or I won't. But I know that sports teams in particular have this strange place in society and culture where we seem to think that there is ownership when there isn't ownership. And there should, like, as I said, be consensus, and there should be participation, and this entitled type of feeling that you should be involved. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I understand it. And that's exactly what's going on right here as we speak. People are screaming and yelling out there about whether this is the right thing to do, and I get it. It's not even necessarily rebranding for some. For some, it's, if you're going to rebrand, at least rebrand in a positive direction. And a lot of people are looking at this new look and this new aesthetic and not thinking that it improves on anything. Now, that's subjective, and that's just personal opinion. But if there must be some data or some research that Columbus and the powers that be, the leadership at Columbus, trust first and foremost, showing that the existing brand is either limiting or detrimental to the future of this business. This business that has such a bright future with new ownership, a brand new stadium that they are opening, and just a very positive type of outlook when it comes to what's happening in Columbus. And that this rebrand is coinciding with the opening of the new Columbus Stadium. These owners and these leaders must believe that doing something like this is going to help generate more credibility and more interest that ultimately is going to benefit that business. And whatever that data or research may be, and it might be people that just have history and might be acting on feel, but you like to think that there is more to that. And we've talked about this before, Mossy, in this continued desire to be businesses and to resonate not just locally but globally, and trying to adhere and embrace the international aspect of it and the classic type of soccer out there with the FCs and the Uniteds and all that kind of stuff, in a way to ingratiate yourself with people that associate that with being more genuine and more authentic and therefore more credible. And I get it to a certain extent, but I also understand and believe that the Americanness, for lack of a better word, is not something to look at as detrimental, and it's not something to throw out automatically. And at times, even leaning into it, I think, can create something very, very special. But I totally get at times why people are doing this. All right, Mossy, anything to say on the rebrand when it comes to Columbus?
I mean, the reaction to this made the reaction to the Super League in Europe look tame. So yeah, it's funny because we were there for MLS Cup this past December. Yep. And met the new owners and took a tour of the stadium, and man, they very impressive and just seemed like they really had a pulse of that city and the fans and all that. And now that they're coming under criticism, the ownership group that ostensibly saved the team from relocating. And so, yeah, it's an amazing turn of events in a relatively short period of time here.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that the trope out there, and the owners as villains, and we've talked a lot about this over the last couple of weeks. And now I'm confused. Are the owners of Columbus good or bad? I can't I can't keep track of it anymore. So we'll see how this all plays out, and we'll see how they go about introducing this or explaining this to the public as to how they have come about doing this. And it may be a lot of hard work, and they may have data and research to back up this decision. By the way, Anthony Precourt, the former owner who moved the team to Austin, also had data and research to back up his desire and his actions when it comes to something like that. But how they frame this, I think, is going to be important. And as I said, you're never going to get everybody to agree and to please, which is why what's going on in Chicago, where they seem to be asking everybody and their mother as to if this is okay. It's really, really difficult to please everybody when you go about trying to please everybody, you end up oftentimes not pleasing anybody at all. So we'll see ultimately how this story plays out and what Columbus looks like come our next show next week, and what we're actually calling it. But by all indications, it's going to have a different crest, and we are going to call it Columbus SC. Although we could use the nickname, which is legitimate, of the Crew going forward. So let's leave it at that. Mossy, anything else?
Nope.
By the way, I should mention that Joseph Martinez scored. So congratulations to him. I don't think he's necessarily back, but he did score. And
I'll use this as a segue for our next topic. That was his first goal since he scored against Motagua in the Concacaf Champions League round of 16 in February of 2020.
Awesome. Well, it was great to see, because he is such a prolific goal scorer, and obviously had a devastating knee injury. So it was good to see him on the score sheet. He immediately ran to his, physical therapist or trainer that he has obviously spent the last year with to try to get him back to this moment, and they both equate getting back to a moment with putting the ball in the net, which is what he is paid to do. So it was a nice, touching type of moment, and here's to many, many more goals for Josef Martinez. He's not back at 100% yet, and he doesn't yet look like the Josef Martinez of old, but ultimately a goal's a goal. They all count the same. All right, to your point, CONCACAF Champions League. Look, we said it last week, Mossy. Again, you shouldn't have killed the messenger, and it wasn't like we were going out there on a limb. Coming off of what was kind of the greatest couple of weeks in CONCACAF Champions League history, with so many MLS teams involved in the quarterfinals, now we find ourselves in the semifinals with only one team having advanced, and that would be the Philadelphia Union. And it's not the only reason they advanced, but it has to be said, they are the one MLS team that played against another MLS team in beating Atlanta United. And this was, for all intents and purposes, done in the first leg, where they went to Atlanta and beat Atlanta 3-0. So Philadelphia beats Atlanta 4-1, and they advance. Cruz Azul beats Toronto 4-1, and Cruz Azul advance. Monterrey beats Columbus 5-2, and Monterrey advances. And America beats Portland 4-2, and America advances. So 3 Liga MX teams and 1 MLS team in the semifinals. Was this? It wasn't necessarily unexpected, Mossy, but still, was it as disappointing as some have made it out to be?
I think it's very disappointing. Now, as you mentioned, there's still an MLS team in there, and if they go on to win it, then the story has a happy ending, and nobody cares about what happened in the earlier rounds. But for now, this has to be a very negative conversation. And listen, I know about the calendar. I think that's a fair thing to bring up, but it cuts both ways. The fact that these CCL games occurred in the opening weeks of the MLS season meant that these MLS teams could rest players in their league games and really focus on CCL, which they all did, while the Mexican teams are right in the thick of the clausura, and they prioritized that. So they rotated a lot of players in the CCL games. If you look at all the games that MLS teams played and Liga MX teams played in the CCL this season, by and large, MLS teams fielded closer to full strength lineups. So you look at that, you look at the fact that MLS essentially has an extra team in there because we count the Canadian team as an MLS team, and to have Liga MX again have the upper hand here is very disappointing. I actually listened to the Football Picante podcast, where they had a lengthy discussion about this. It was interesting to get the Mexican perspective on it. Now, they were very smug. They hear all the chatter about how MLS is catching up. So they were reveling and puffing their chest out, and the fact that yet again, another year, Liga MX took it to MLS. And so the conversation was in a very dismissive tone, but they did make a couple of interesting points. One guy brought up the fact that he feels like MLS teams spend a disproportionate amount of money on attacking players, and that makes MLS a very entertaining league, more entertaining, in fact, to even acknowledge this, than Liga MX. But it does mean in these, defense wins championships kind of thing, in these big CCL games, those defensive frailties show. Did you buy that argument?
I can buy that. I mean, yes, it takes much more for an MLS team to go out and spend big money on a defender. It takes much more courage, I think, because the payoff isn't always visible. Like, I mean, I know I was a defender, but I recognize that for the most part, we're not sexy and we don't sell the tickets. Okay. And we don't bring the eyeballs. There's a reason why the people that put the ball in the net are so sought after, and why they get paid the big bucks. And if you are going to spend money, especially money that you feel is going to bring you something that is better than what you have, the conventional wisdom is that you use it on creative and attacking players out there. So I can understand what they are saying. And I guess if I have to choose between winning CONCACAF Champions League and having a more entertaining and attacking league, I will always take the more entertaining and attacking league, and that's fine. The excuses, as you said, we've all heard them a million times. They are valid and they are fair, but I don't think anybody right now is spouting them off. It's part of the deal. Now, if you want to have a serious conversation internally in MLS as to how you want to go about winning this, if this is a priority, and like most things, it all comes down to money. need to be able to spend more money, and the disparity with how much some of these teams spend over in League MX relative to the teams that they are playing in these Concacaf Champions League is marked. And it's also the depth, as you mentioned, the amount of players. I mean, a lot of these teams and a lot of these games, they were resting their starters, even against these MLS teams. And a lot of these MLS teams, they did themselves in the first leg. And so you can't, if you're an MLS team, you can't afford, I mean, Toronto didn't have any of their designated players out there. So, and I know they got by Lyon in that first round, but it was by the grace of the soccer gods that ultimately that happened. And you can't expect to continue to do something like that. So if you don't have all guns blazing and you are already with one foot behind your back when it comes to calendar or when it comes to spending, it's very, very difficult. And a lot of these things, I think, turned on that first game. And I think a lot of people tried to spin it as, oh, it's okay, we can come. No, you got to win your first game if you are playing at home. And a lot of these MLS teams were playing their first game at home, and then they went to the second leg away. But they put themselves in a hole that they don't have the quality and the depth to dig out of. And so that was ultimately what the problem is. To your point, though, we got Philadelphia, very, very good team. And let's see, the leg one semifinals are in August. So certainly someone like Philadelphia will now be in the midst of everything. They will have grown. You like to think that they will have progressed even, through that summer. There might have been some changes here or there that you like to think have made them that much better. But they're gonna go up against America, and then Monterrey versus Cruz Azul. So let's see, leg one semifinals August 10th. Leg two semifinal are September 16th. So which
is completely bizarre.
It's a big gap. I didn't realize that. What is going on, Mossy? So these teams are going to look very, very different. But this is deal with it, adjust. Anything more CCL, Mossy?
No, one random note. I don't have anywhere else to put this, so I'll say it here. We're at the midway point of the Copa Libertadores group stage. Tim Vickery wrote a column about it, and he mentioned this in passing, which was a really interesting point that I hope he fleshes out more in a future column. He said that MLS has become a big X factor in the Copa Libertadores now, the degree to which they pluck players from South America. A lot of teams' fortunes now rest on whether they're able to hold on to their players or lose them to Major League Soccer. So you have MLS all of a sudden as sort of a wild card in the Copa Libertadores each year. I thought that was a very interesting point by Vickery.
Well, that's actually music to MLS's ears if they are actually a player, because what it means is that you are changing hearts and minds, and the perception of that step that in the past might have been to someplace in Europe, maybe a lower league in Europe, and that there is that credibility and that ability to do that, so much so that it becomes part of the strategy of what's going on, and they have to adjust. That's a good thing. That's a good thing to hear, and that MLS can compete both when it comes to the money, but also in terms of what they are offering these players. That's a good thing, and hopefully that continues on. All right. Anything else, Mossy?
That's it.
All right, we're going to end this segment, and we're going to go take a little break. When we come back, we'll take a little trip around the rest of the world. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. We are going to take a little trip around the rest of the world here because there was a lot of stuff going on, Mossy. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's put a ribbon on the UEFA Champions League semifinals. Both second legs occurred last week. Two English sides moved on. Why don't we take them in the order that the matches were played? Manchester City defeated PSG 2-0 at home to complete a 4-1 aggregate triumph. My thoughts there. This Manchester City team has shown a real adaptability this season that they didn't have before. Now, of course, with Pep there, they're always going to have this overall philosophy and style of play, but they've shown an ability to win in different ways this season. They actually played a big part of this match on the counter and sort of let PSG have the ball. And when they won it back, were very direct in the way they attacked PSG, and the game plan worked perfectly. PSG huffed and puffed all game, but didn't really create that many clear chances. Mahrez scores twice, and City get out of there with a nice and tidy 2-0 win. I know I'm the 9 billionth person to make this point, but Ruben Diaz was sensational. What a signing he's been. He belongs in any best center back in the world discussions right now. Again, another Portuguese player. I continue to say, if Ronaldo's still Ronaldo come November 2022, Portugal is my pick to win the next World Cup. I'm enamored of their talent. I won't rattle off the whole list again. I've done it several times on this podcast, but Ruben Diaz is in there. So City take care of business here. They move on to the final. What did you make of this one?
I didn't even think there was a question as to who the best team was. Somebody asked me a little earlier if Pep was faced with he could either win Champions League or win Champions League and lose the Premier League title to Manchester United, would he take that? I mean, I think all of his focus, and it's not his legacy, but I think he needs to check this box in that he personally feels like he needs to check this Champions League box. I think that this is, and I think that he has the team to do it. To your point, because I think he's grown. And Pep Guardiola, like any person and any coach out there, can grow and can evolve. And we talk so much about Pep overthinking things, and a lot of that's just kind of narrative out there. But I do think that he feels, it seems like he's much more content, and he has added different elements, like you said, a little more flexibility, and as opposed to a rigidness in terms of this is how we are going to do it come hell or high water. And I think that shows a progression and an evolution that I think is important to him. And I think that this is, I mean, if you were a betting man, and I know we'll talk about the other game, I think you got to be really, really bullish about Pep Guardiola and this Man City team winning Champions League.
And just on PSG, I know everybody loves to have a go at that team. If you look at it, if you take a step back and just look at a big picture, getting to the final last season and semifinals this season is not a bad 2-year run. Last year, they lost a hard-fought 1-0 game to a transcendently great Bayern Munich team. No shame in that. This year, they go out in the semis to a transcendently great Manchester City team, a club, by the way, that's funded the same way they are and has spent just as much money as they have the last decade or so. So you can't really hit them over the head with that when they lose to Manchester City. That being said, though, and by the way, they had an impressive run to the semis this season. They got out of a group with Manchester United and Leipzig, had a clutch win at Old Trafford late in the group stage when they had their backs against the wall, and then eliminated Barcelona in the round of 16 and Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals before even getting to the semifinal against Manchester City. That being said, the way they lost these two games, the way they lost their cool, the red cards, it did sort of reinforce the notion that this is a mentally fragile team, that when they're hit with any real adversity, they crumble. They were kind of starting to shed that a little bit with, as I mentioned, some of their victories in the Champions League the last couple of years and getting to the final last year, and some of the teams they knocked out on the way to the semis this season. But that all came back in these two games against Manchester City. So while I think sometimes the criticism of that team is unfair, if you want to specifically criticize their lack of composure in these two games against City, I think it's absolutely fair.
Well, I think it also points out that, with all things being equal and relatively equal when it comes to the amount of money and the ridiculous amounts of money that they are spending, and whether it's the super clubs that we have out there, this Super League talk, when it really gets down to the differences, it's your star play. I mean, if you don't have Mbappe, okay, that's a big deal, okay? And I know that they have incredible talent all over the field, but you're looking for just that little bit of advantage. And when it comes to the elite of the elite, when elites are playing, you got to have that little advantage. And when you don't, that might be the difference between you winning and losing. And I know these are such small margins in this crazy, ridiculous, super rich type of world that we are talking about here with these teams. But I mean, I think it shows why these players are valued the way that they are. And I'm not just talking about the value of how good they are, the literal value that they are, that and the price tags that are put on them. And this will play with Erling Haaland as we go on, and all those different things. There's a reason why these what could be looked at as ridiculous amounts of money are spent in an effort to win, because they know, I mean, this is all a bunch of the richest teams getting together. And so when they finally do get together, they got to have that little bit of advantage. What else, Mossy?
And just one last thought on PSG here. Leonardo, their sporting director, looks pretty bad here. Now he reminds me a little bit of Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager, in that he gets some of the smaller moves right, but the big ones he gets wrong. He's actually made some sneaky good moves the last couple of years to round out that squad, signing Keylor Navas for the amount they did, picked up Moise Kean on loan, who's been surprisingly good this season, Alessandro Florenzi on loan, who's been a pretty good right back for them, signed Ander Herrera on a free last year. But the big moves, he shoved Thiago Silva and Edison Cavani out the door, thinking both those guys were washed up. And both guys have proved them wrong. Obviously, Thiago Silva at the heart of that Chelsea defense, who we'll get to in a second, and helping them get to the Champions League final. Edinson Cavani's been terrific for Manchester United, helps them get to a Europa League final, just signed an extension today. They got rid of him to create room for Icardi, who was an absolute disaster in that second leg against Manchester City. I've never been a big fan of his. I know the numbers he put up with Inter and Serie A, but he's just not for me. And then the big one is he sacks Tuchel mid-season, and short time after Tuchel gets hired by Chelsea, and lo and behold, Chelsea are in the Champions League final and PSG are not. So Leonardo's going to have to answer for all of that, because in terms of the big decisions he made ahead of this season, and even during the season, in the case of Tuchel, he got them all wrong. They all blew up completely in his face. And, we can use that to segue, since two of the people I just mentioned, Tuchel and Thiago Silva, were featured prominently in the other semifinal. Chelsea 2-0 victory over Real Madrid to complete a 3-1 aggregate triumph. And frankly, Chelsea should have won this game 4-5-0. I mean, they were so superior. Some of the chances they missed. Zinedine Zidane. Look, I know he's Zinedine Zidane, and who am I? But he got this one spectacularly wrong. The lineup he put out was ridiculous. It caught everybody by surprise. To play Vinicius Jr. as a right wing back was preposterous to me. And so he took away one of his most dynamic players. Vinicius looked completely out of sorts at that position, and created a major problem defensively, because Vinicius is not used to defending from that position. So Chilwell was bombing down that left wing all game, and there was nobody tracking him. So Zidane, to me, really hurt his team with that lineup. And then the other issue for Real Madrid is Eden Hazard, who has just been a catastrophe. I mean, everybody talks about Barcelona's big misses in the transfer market in recent years, but I got news for you. All those guys have done more for Barcelona than Hazard has for Real Madrid. And some of them, Griezmann, Dembele, are even kind of turning a corner there. Coutinho, not so much. But even Coutinho, if you look at the numbers and some of the moments he's had, I would argue it did more for Barcelona than Eden Hazard ever has for Real Madrid. So they paid well over 100 million euros for him. He was their first big post-Ronaldo signing, expected to fill that void. And to me, he has failed miserably, and that was laid to bear against his former team.
Plus, he's tone deaf. I mean, if you're rarely playing, it was all this money and all this hype and all this expectation, and you're rarely getting on the field, and then you get on the field and your team bombs out, and then you're running around, hugging and shaking hands and smiling about it. I mean, is it a problem? It's not a problem in that I don't think he's a bad person for it. It's just, you are a world superstar. You know how the world works and how people are viewing different things. And maybe you don't care. And I get it, but the reaction, or I guess for some it would be the overreaction to his behavior after the game. And for those that didn't see it, he was shown on the field kind of laughing and smiling and congratulating his former team and teammates after losing that game. And there was a kind of sentiment and certainly an old school sentiment of, that's not appropriate behavior, and you should look forlorn and sad and recognize the gravity of this failure that you have just been a part of. And it was amazing to see the Spanish media and the way that they portrayed it, and the music that was used, the entertainment. And look, we don't watch it on a continual basis, so this is nothing this is nothing new. But I love the performance aspect of the way that they glommed onto this and used it to frame not just the player, but Real Madrid, and I guess in a bigger sense, soccer, because it was reinforcing this notion that soccer is more than a sport, and it's a religion, and it should be treated as such, and your motivations and your actions should reflect that this is not just about kicking a ball. This is about so much more.
On the Chelsea side, the star of this tie for me was N'Golo Kante, who has reestablished himself as one of the best players in the world. There's even like a bit of a campaign for him to win the Ballon d'Or this year if Chelsea win the Champions League. It's interesting because he had reached this exalted status when he won that Premier League with Leicester in 2016, then again with Chelsea in 2017 and the World Cup with France in 2018. But back then he was known mostly as a defensive player and was immensely valuable in just his ability to win the ball back. And now he's become this legit two-way player and shown a side of his game I didn't realize he had. And he had a hand in both Chelsea goals. And, you talk about these matchups within the matchup. A lot of people talked about him versus Casemiro, who was going to dominate the midfield in these two games. And he destroyed. I mean, I love Casemiro to death, but N'Golo Kante destroyed him. He left no doubt who is the best player in the world at that position. And so remarkable from him. And then not far behind on the list of Chelsea heroes in this tie is Christian Pulisic, who started the first leg, scored a really well-taken goal, was surprisingly left out of the 11 in the second leg, but it ended up being smart strategy on Tuchel's part because the front three he started played well, and then he saved Pulisic for when Real Madrid's defense was tired, unleashed him, and he wreaked havoc the last part of that game, including a beautiful assist for Mason Mount, who's another player worth highlighting. But on Pulisic, what did you make of him?
I mean, he was great in his capacity. First in the first game as a starter, and the second game coming off the bench, and again, it just shows that the value and the talent of Tuchel and what he has done, which is going to get plenty of praise, but it almost should get more praise as to what he has fundamentally done and changed with this team in such a short period of time, and with a team that I'm not even sure is his ultimate looking Chelsea team. So Christian Pulisic is, but it was also interesting to see his frustration at being a substitute. And every player is frustrated at being a substitute. Everybody wants to do it. And yet he was almost the perfect substitute to come on. And what it means is, and to your point, Chelsea should have won this game by even more. They were far and away the better team. What it means is obviously we have two English teams in the final. It also means that we have a guaranteed American to win a Champions League. When it comes to the male side, it hasn't been done since our friend Jovan Karowski. All right.
That's correct. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think about Stefan being included in all this? Because I feel like the focus should be on Pulisic right now. The U.S., they've had great goalkeepers. They've had better goalkeepers than Stefan, frankly, guys who have been starters for big European clubs. Stefan is a backup. If Ederson doesn't get hurt between now and the final, there's no chance he's going to play. And so, I don't know, people making about, there being two Americans that are going head-to-head. I feel like the focus should be on Pulisic. The fact that two teams are about to play a Champions League final and one of the most dynamic players in the game is an American, one of the guys most likely to decide the game with a moment of brilliance is an American, that's immensely significant. The Stefan thing, it's, I don't know, doesn't really do much for me.
Why do you hate Zach Stefan? And goalkeepers for that matter? No, I get what you're saying. There's nothing that Zach can do about it, and I don't think it should necessarily diminish our pride or his accomplishment of being the backup goalkeeper to one, if not the greatest team in the world. That's all good stuff. But absolutely, to your point, it is a little apples and oranges when you are talking about the two. Unless, and knock on wood, I don't want anybody to get hurt, but who knows? He could still play a part. But as I said, it shouldn't diminish what he has done, still solidifying himself as being the number two for Man City. But to your point, the talk should be about what Christian Pulisic has the potential to do here in this final.
And because I said that, Ederson is going to get hurt and Stefan's going to have like 15 saves and be the star of the match. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, that's why he is there. That's why all backup goalkeepers are there. And it's a lonely and difficult type of job. And you got people like David Mossy taking shots at you, not literal shots, but figurative shots at you. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Now, the final is until May 29, so we can keep our powder dry until then. But just some early preliminary thoughts. Chelsea knocked off Manchester City recently in the FA Cup semifinal, and then they beat them again this past weekend in the Premier League, preventing City from clinching the Premier League title. What do you think? Are you buying into this, that Tuchel is in Pep's head and maybe has kind of figured him out tactically, and that gives Chelsea the edge in this final? Or the fact that they beat him twice recently makes you more bullish that you're not going to beat City 3 times in a short period of time? What do you...
Law of averages or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I think 3 is too much. If I was worried about, if I didn't think that Man City is a better team, then I'd be okay saying, but yeah, I mean, I don't see how you can do it 3 times in a row. So, I mean, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen to Chelsea was winning the game over the weekend.
And it's interesting because we covered the Bundesliga for 5 seasons, and the first of those seasons, this was the Bayern Dortmund coaching matchup. We caught Pep's last season at Bayern, and that was Tuchel's first season at Dortmund after he replaced Klopp. So I thought about that too in the last couple of days. That I remember like covering games where that was the coaching matchup all those years back then, and then now we get it again in a Champions League final. Tuchel, by the way, becomes the first coach ever to reach consecutive Champions League finals with 2 different teams. Obviously coached PSG last season against Bayern, and now he coaches Chelsea in this one. So yeah, like I said, we got plenty of time to look ahead to this final. Should be a good one.
Okay. And what else, Mossy?
And then we should just mention the Europa League final is set as well. We were 1 Arsenal goal away from it being an all-English final here as well, which that happened in 2019, by the way. We had all-English Champions League and all-English Europa League finals. I thought we might be headed for the same thing once the Champions League final was set, and United, you knew, was going to go through. So it all came down to Arsenal beating Villarreal at home. And they although they were pretty poor, they did hit the post twice. So we were inches away from it, but instead 0-0, very satisfying.
Can you imagine how insufferable? I mean, they're already insufferable, but how insufferable the English would be if that had happened. And we should also mention that the Champions League final right now, while it was and still, I guess, as we are talking right now, still scheduled to be in Turkey. The sources are saying that it's possibly going to be in London or Lisbon because of on the surface, because of the pandemic and the situation and the problems that and the challenges that happen, but that there are 2 English teams in the final has kind of pushed this along. But there's only 3 of the 4 in the final. So Manchester United, Villarreal. What do you got right now if you had to pick?
Oh, United. Manchester United wouldn't have looked out of place in these Champions League semifinals. They're like a top team that they were in a tough group with Leipzig and PSG and kind of screwed up, but ended up finishing 3rd and ended up.
Wait. So Manchester United's a top team in the world?
Yeah. And they've ended up here in the Europa League, and it's been like man amongst boys for them in the Europa League. So, I mean, they're clearly going to win this.
So their owners are good? I don't understand, Mossy. They're a top team in the world. They have created a situation where the money that has been spent wisely and has enabled them to be the top team or one of the top teams in the world. Okay. All right. I got it. All right. Anything else, Mossy, when it comes
nothing on the Champions League, but we mentioned PSG. So they get knocked out. Neymar, as usual, comes under immense criticism. And then just a couple of days after, I mean, the blood isn't even dry yet. And they announced that they've agreed this mega extension with Neymar, 4 years. He's earning 30 million euros per season in base salary and all sorts of bonuses that are going to make it more than that. So this has triggered an interesting reaction. I said recently that, this entire thing was being viewed through the prism of Neymar and whether he was willing to pledge his future to PSG. Well, although I'm a Neymar fan, I felt like more questions should be asked from the PSG side of things. Even if you think all the criticisms of Neymar are unfair and you love him as a player, just his age and injury track record the last few years alone makes it questionable to hand him this kind of contract. But they did. And the reaction in France has actually been very mixed. So, I mean, what do you think about Neymar signing a 4-year extension with PSG?
I think Neymar maybe took stock of his life and his moment in life right now and said, I got it good. All right. They're going to pay me a ridiculous amount of money. I am still looked at as one of the greats in the world. There is still the goal out there that they are going to fuel and feed to win Champions League. And I can certainly be a part of that. Lifestyle wise, I dig living over here, and this is a good place for me. So I thought that he would have more of a wandering eye at this moment. And so in that sense, I think it is a surprise. And I guess in that sense, it's a coup. But you're looking at it much more from a PSG perspective, saying, is this good for them to have done?
Yeah, well, and I'll get to the Neymar end of it too, but I guess from a PSG perspective, they're reading the tea leaves and feeling like Mbappe is going to go. He's going to force a move to Real Madrid, and that Messi's going to stay. I now think it's like a 95% certainty that Messi resigns with Barcelona. And so they didn't want to be shut out altogether in this sort of game of superstar musical chairs. So at least give Neymar whatever he wants, lock him up. At least we have a big, sexy star to build around, and they'll go from there. We'll see what kind of team they can build around him. I do think, like I said, Mbappe's going and Messi's not coming. So it's right now. So it's going to, when the dust settles, it's just going to be Neymar and whoever else they can bring in. And, they want to have him, from what I read, they want to have a big star when the 2022 World Cup in Qatar rolls around. Obviously, the Qatari owned PSG. They want to have like a PSG player be like one of the prominent stars at that World Cup. So that's part of the calculation here. From the Neymar perspective, I just wish there was an option C. Because it seems like it was either re-sign with PSG, which I don't love, or go back to Barcelona and go back to being Messi's sidekick, which I don't love either. It sounds like this Barcelona regime with Laporta was much more open to bringing him back than the previous president, Bartomeu. So had Neymar pushed it, I think he probably could have potentially gotten his move back to Barcelona when you consider the fact that his contract was set to run out in 2022, same as Mbappe. So with both of them, PSG was in this awkward, well, if we can't sign them to an extension, we probably have to sell them to avoid losing them for free. And that's where I think it's going to play out with Mbappe. And Neymar could have played it out that way as well, but instead he's chosen to resign. So I guess he views that as the lesser of two evils to going back to Barcelona. So,
I would have loved to see him go back to Barcelona.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Just for the content. It would have been great. All right, let's move on. We got to blaze through this.
Yeah. And just to tag this whole Neymar conversation, PSG, it looks like, aren't even going to win Ligue 1 this season. Neymar scored from the penalty spot this past weekend, but they surrendered an equalizer to Rennes, finished 1-1. Lille won their game. So Lille are now 3 points up with 2 rounds to play. So I think Lille are going to win Ligue 1. And PSG, by the way, as of right now, are not even mathematically in the Champions League for next season because Monaco are 2 points back of them and Lyon are 3 points back with 2 rounds to play. It's only the top 3 in France. So PSG could theoretically finish 4th and be out of the Champions League. Unlikely, but it's still mathematically possible with 2 rounds left, which is pretty crazy. So that's the situation in France. And then do you want to shift to, and I agree with you, we got to whip through these quickly. Do you want to shift to Spain?
Well, let's just dust off Bundesliga too. Congratulations. I mean, do we even congratulate them or what?
Yeah. So what happened there was Dortmund beat Leipzig 3-2 at home. No Erling Haaland, but Jadon Sancho stepped up, scored 2 goals. By the way, another country who I'm enamored of their talent is England. I mean, just last week, you could have watched Phil Foden on Tuesday from Manchester City. Mason Mount on Wednesday for Chelsea, and then Jadon Sancho on Saturday, starring for Dortmund in this win over Leipzig. So Dortmund with this win, they vault into the top 4, which has some Erling Haaland implications, because it sounds like if they finish in the top 4, he'd be amenable to staying there another year. If they finish outside the top 4, then he'll almost definitely want to leave this summer. So Dortmund get that result. They move into the top 4. And that result also means, yes, Bayern clinched a 9th straight Bundesliga title, which, I mean, what do you make of that? To your point, is this something even worth celebrating anymore?
I don't care. I don't care that they won another title, in that I've seen it before. They spend ungodly amounts, well, relative to everyone else, they spend more money to ensure that it happens. I think I saw them, there was an article that came out where Bayern Munich was talking about the identity and, the internal commitment to excellence. And I understand that. It's an excellent team. It's one of the great teams in the world. But they spend a lot of money to ensure that they are successful. And that's fine. But it gets boring. And I don't think it's necessarily good for the league. I'm not saying you have to have an MLS type of competitive balance out there, but you got to have some others where there's a bunch. Even the parity when it comes to the top of the EPL is, I think, a whole lot more interesting and entertaining than just having a Bundesliga that is dominated year in and year out. And the Bundesliga, they look at it as a business, and they are very, very smart in the way that they have cultivated what the business is. And I wonder if they have conversations, and obviously those conversations are probably dominated oftentimes by Bayern Munich, but do they ever look at it and say, hey, this is, in an effort to expand the brand of the Bundesliga and to become more popular around the world, is this a good or a bad thing that we are so predictable and that it is so unbalanced and lopsided when it comes to what we are doing? And they're much smarter and more clever men and women that are deciding these things, but I wonder it from the outside. What else, Mossy?
Then in Spain, 2 massive games this weekend. Barcelona, Atletico Madrid played to a 0-0 draw at Camp Nou. Give Atletico credit. They came to play in this game. Simeone put out an attack-minded lineup. They were the better team in the first half, created lots of chances. Barcelona were the better team in the second half, but neither one could score. The play of this game occurred in the first half. Messi almost scored what would have been a top 5 goal in his career. He went on the slalom run, beat half the Atletico team, and then a perfect shot in the corner that if it was any other goalkeeper, I think it's a goal. But Jan Oblak, who's the best goalkeeper in the world, somehow got his fingertips on it. So that was just an amazing moment to marvel at the brilliance of 2 players. First off, the best player in the world making the play that Messi made, but then being denied by the best goalkeeper in the world doing what he did. So it ended 0-0. Which opened the door for Real Madrid to, if they had beaten Sevilla, to move into first place. But instead, they had to settle for a 2-2 draw. A lot of VAR controversy in this game. Real Madrid had a goal wiped out for a millimetric offsides. And then there was this incredible sequence in the second half when the game was 1-1, where a corner for Sevilla, cross into the box. Militão, it smacked his arm, but the referee played on. Real Madrid broke the other way. Benzema was taken down by the goalkeeper in the box, so penalty for Real Madrid. But then they reviewed it on VAR and they determined the Militão play was a handball, and so they gave the penalty to Sevilla instead. Real Madrid felt very aggrieved. A lot of games gone. VAR is a joke type stuff. What did you make of all that craziness?
VAR in that instance worked exactly as it should. You rewind it back, and it was ill-gotten gains ultimately for Real Madrid, and so they can complain all that they want, but you're not going to stop at mid-play. We've seen that time and time again, that they let the play continue, and that it continued and resulted in something at the other side. That's neither here nor there. You go back, and they rectified what they felt was a clear and obvious error that had happened on the other side. And they used technology to be able to do that. So I have no sympathy. Well, I have some sympathy, but it worked exactly as it's supposed to work.
So this round ends with Atletico Madrid in first place at 77 points. And then Real Madrid and Barcelona each with 75 with 3 rounds to go. I know we're running late here, but do you want to bring Luis Aguilar in? Because he showed up today wearing an Atletico Madrid jersey. He is all in on this Atletico.
Don't worry about running late, folks. Okay, we're gonna, if you got to fast forward, you can fast forward. If you want to play it at triple speed, do whatever you want out there. We're just gonna keep going. There's no time in 2021, and of course we're gonna bring Luis in. Are you kidding
Luis,
me?
explain
all
yourself.
Dressed up.
Yeah, you're rocking an Atletico jersey today. Explain yourself.
Yeah, am I just calling it because Ache is on the team? Absolutely, of course. But I think they have a legitimate chance to win because I think Simeone's been in the spot before, right? Last time in 2014, it came down to the last match day, and I think it's gonna happen again probably. So I think they can do it, and I think he's in the hot seat. Like if he doesn't win it after having such a huge lead, I think like it's out for him. So I feel like he has to win. It's do or die. And maybe in 3 match days, who knows? Like I'll look like a clown in this jersey, but I have faith in the team.
Couple things.
Never look like a clown, Luis.
Yeah, no. Couple things. You don't need a jersey to look like a clown. Number one. Number two. You've just completely guaranteed that Real Madrid is winning La Liga. But number 3, thank you. Thank you for coming on and expressing yourself in such an eloquent manner. We'll see. But you think that this is not only pressure to win, but this is pressure if this doesn't happen that Simeone's out? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think he's out, especially after the last 2 Champions League losses versus RB Leipzig, last Champions League campaign, and now in the round of 16, it was versus Chelsea, which is a very good team, but I don't think that this could keep going.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, at least there's some competition. At least something's going on right now.
By the way, Jeff Hernandez mocking Luis Aguilar's analysis. I believe that's a sarcastic message.
His text in our site here says, "What a take!" All right. I got a feeling that it's not because he is really enamored with your take right now. I appreciate it, though. You look good. You sounded good, my friend. We'll see if you've jinxed your team, though.
And by the way, the first tiebreaker in Spain is head-to-head. So Real Madrid have it over both Barcelona and Atletico, which helps their cause. Atletico have it over Barcelona, but not Real Madrid. Barcelona don't have it over either, so they have to finish with the most points to win La Liga. So keep that in mind. And then last thing is Italy, where Inter has already won the title. So it's all about top 4 now. Milan with a 3-0 away win over Juventus this past weekend, which knocked Juventus out of the top 4. They are in 5th place with 3 rounds to go. The specter of Ronaldo and Juventus finishing outside the top 4 and missing the Champions League is remarkable to me. But the big story in Italy had nothing to do with anything on the field. Jose Mourinho is back, hired by Roma. I have some thoughts on this, but I'll let you go first. What was your instant reaction when you heard that Jose Mourinho got a job very quickly after being sacked by Tottenham? He goes to AS Roma.
I care about Roma. I mean, and that's why this makes sense for Roma. I think he can just concentrate on the league. I think that he can find a way to make it better and therefore, actually in a certain sense, rehabilitate his image and be special in a way that he improves Roma. That's. But I also think it's a form of branding and marketing because of how big he is and what he brings with him. So I think it's smart. I think it's inspired, and I'm here for it. And I'll be interested to see, and I'll be interested to watch a team that in normal circumstances I wouldn't necessarily watch.
It is another step back for him. I know Serie A folk might bristle at that, but in the current landscape, Tottenham are bigger than Roma. When he was hired by Tottenham, they were a few months removed from playing in a Champions League final, and now he takes over the 7th best team in Serie A. It's a sort of job that 10 years ago he wouldn't have even considered, or even 5 years ago. But now here we are with him. Having said all that, I don't hate it. When he was sacked by Manchester United, there was a lot of talk about where he might end up. And I thought Italy back then was a country where he still had some cachet. The last time he managed there, he led Inter to a treble. And let's be honest, although Serie A has actually been quite entertaining and high scoring in recent years, there's still something about the Italian football and culture, which you can obviously speak to. There's a greater appreciation for defending there. If he were to build a Roma team that's just well organized, churns out results, maybe doesn't play the most exciting soccer, he'd get less grief for it in Italy than he would perhaps elsewhere. So this to me is not a bad fit at all. It's still kind of it's on the margins, but it's still kind of sort of in the mainstream of European football. And so, I'm curious to see what he can do.
He gets to live in Rome too. I mean,
yeah, that alone, I love that city. So I agree with you. That to me is big.
It's great. I'm here for it. All right. Anything else, Mossy?
That is it.
All right. We're going to take another real quick break. When we come back, we'll have our Ask Alexi segment. Don't go away. All right. We're back. It's time for Ask Alexi. We've pulled some questions out there from the folks. What do they want to know this week, Mossy?
You're a little quick on the draw there.
Okay. All right. Well, you want me to vamp?
The Woodlands editor asks, why are there so many English coaches at youth level in the U.S. as opposed to, say, those from a real soccer nation like Brazil?
All right. So he's being a little bit facetious when, and taking a shot at everybody else as opposed to Brazil there. And I appreciate that. And thank you for following me, the Woodlands editor there. But it does bring up an interesting phenomenon that I think if you are my age and certainly generations after me, you can't have been helped but being influenced and impacted by the English and British soccer culture over here in the United States. If back in the 70s and the 80s when the suburban youth soccer was just exploding. It was ubiquitous in that you would at a certain point you would always have an English coach, and there were many from traditional and credible soccer cultures that were immediately either recruited or volunteered. By the way, including my father, who is Greek. If you had an accent, if you were from what people perceived as a soccer playing country or culture, immediately you were given the benefit of the doubt. And the expat English community had the added benefit of language, which helped to establish, an influence and a presence that, as I said, continues today. And it was, very, very, it was always there. And it can, as I said, it continues today. And yes, there is a specific style or a stereotypical type of play that is associated oftentimes with English soccer. But I think that's a little simplistic, and I think it has evolved. And I think in general, we have certainly benefited over the years from the influx and the influence that community has presented us with. And so that's part of why we have that influence. And it has, if you look at youth soccer, if you look at college soccer, if you look at professional soccer, if you look at women's soccer, that English influence is everywhere. Even the stuff that we talk about today when it comes to off the field stuff that has gone on, we look to the English and we look to the English culture oftentimes to direct us. And that's the reason why that influence is so prevalent and has been for such a long time. Now, as I said, it has started to change. and to evolve. And we certainly have, it's not all about, expats, and it's not all about, people that are here that we just simply say, all right, well, you're from X country, you obviously know about soccer. And we have a wonderful, robust, and passionate and knowledgeable soccer culture that exists here. But that's the reason, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Mossy, when you were younger, were you coached by Englishmen or Englishwomen? Ever?
No, my youth coaches were either American or Hispanic. But let me just say to the Brazil part of this, the timing of that tweet is curious, because right now England are doing a much better job than Brazil of producing players and have a youth system that I think is much more worth emulating. I mean, as a Brazilian, I'm jealous of England's young talent. I would kill for any of Sancho, Rashford, Foden, or Mount to be Brazilian, but that's neither here nor there. Next question, staying on the England tip, Eric wants to know, any doubt that the Premier League is the best league in the world now?
Well, again, it's subjective, right? The best. I can no more tell you what the best league is in the world than I can tell you what the best music or art or looking person or the best writer is. It's whatever. The best is the one that you love. Now, the most popular, and I guess that's without a doubt, and I guess the most successful, I think, depending on how you're going to define it, and we've talked about that earlier in the pod, but that you have, the Premier League teams that are dominating when it comes to ratings, that are dominating when it comes to Champions League, that are dominating when it comes to Europa, and that are just dominating when it comes to relevance around the world. I certainly think that you can make a case, depending on how you define best, that it is the best in the world. I think they've done a good job, or better than others, as we mentioned, of making it a more competitive type of league than others around Europe, and I think that's in and of itself has made it more attractive. But I can't tell you that it's the best league in the world. I mean, like I said, the league that you love is the best league in the world, unless you give me an actual definition of what your quote unquote best is going forward. I don't know. Do you think it's the best league in the world, Mossy?
Yeah, I mean, I look at leagues in Europe like I do conferences in college football and college basketball, in that it's cyclical, and we need to be able to change our opinions from season to season depending on results. And I think this season, as we mentioned, we have an all-English Champions League final and an English team in the Europa League final. So I think right now they've definitely earned the right to puff their chest out and say they've been the best league in the world this season. Last season, for instance, we didn't have an English team even in the semifinals of the Champions League, and we had won Manchester United in the Europa League semis. They lost to Sevilla. So last season, maybe not. So I'm comfortable with it changing from year to year. I don't think there has to be this one definitive answer to what the best league is.
No, but it is an evergreen type of question, and it does, as you said, it shifts and changes out there. And there are people that are adamant that while it is the most popular league, it isn't the best league, and they'll point to the way that the game is played over there and the style, as opposed to they'll juxtapose it with La Liga or something like that. There are folks out there that will absolutely look to something like La Liga or Bundesliga or other leagues out there and say this is the best league, and they will have their own criteria as to why that is. What's next, Mossy?
And we'll end on this. There seems to be a question like this every week now as you use this Ask Alexi segment as your therapy session. Steve Marusic asks, do you ever get tired of people being jerks to you on here? You always handle it with a laugh, but it seems like it would get super old.
I long ago accepted and understood the fact that Twitter, to a certain extent, is designed to be a jerk machine. Okay, it is designed to give everyone an opportunity to have a microphone and a platform from which to scream at others. Now, there are also mechanisms that you can use to deaden or completely silence those screams and yells. I get that. I have never blocked anybody. Although certainly there are plenty of times that that I would look at a situation and if there and things that were said to me or directed to me would warrant a block. But if Twitter bothered me in the way that you're kind of framing it here, I would turn it off. And I know that there's an element of addiction when it comes to social media. I get that. And to your point, Mossy, I'm sure that there are doctors out there that could diagnose, and point to reasons why I have gravitated to Twitter or why I seem to embrace and shower in some of the criticism, much more so than than any type of praise or kindness out there, which there is a lot of. It's just oftentimes not as good for the show. But the criticism or the jerkiness of Twitter, it comes with the gig, and it comes with the gig of obviously being involved in sports and being public. And I get that, and I accepted that a long time ago, before social media was ever around. I recognized that people were going to say things about you to your face, behind your back, online, in writing, on the phone, in messages, all different stuff out there. But I'm just going to reiterate this. I do truly believe in the goodness of people in general. And as I said, saying mean things, hateful things, jerky things, often anonymously behind a keyboard on a social media platform like Twitter that is, as I said, designed to enable and embolden people to say jerky things, also doesn't necessarily mean that somebody hates me. And also, at my core, I know I'm awesome. And so screw them. if they're going to say mean things. And so I know that I oftentimes amplify and I give people license almost to say mean things to me. And maybe in a certain sense, because I amplify it, I encourage them to say it. But I try to, like you said, handle it with a laugh to the extent that I can. And I do. I don't look at it necessarily as real world or real life. I look at it much more as almost as a video game that I am playing. And does it get old? I mean, it gets old in that people sometimes use the same phrases over and over again. I enjoy it when somebody is, to your words, a jerk to me, but does it with a sense of style and does it with a sense of wit and does it with an intellect and is clever about the way in which they are a jerk to me. Not everybody does that. Some people just go straight for the lowest common denominator, which certainly can resonate and cut through the clutter. But to your question, ultimately, I haven't gotten tired yet. But if and when I do, I'll simply unplug. All right, Mossy, anything else?
That's it.
All right. I should mention this because we have talked, and I know this is coming late in the pod, so many of you probably have already turned off. Not that you will hear me saying that, but I think it's important to mention this because a couple weeks ago we talked about having audio AskAlexi moments. So this is what we have done. We have actually created, well, not created, we have gotten ourselves a telephone number. So I'm going to read it out here so everybody knows it. The new number where you can leave messages, okay, for the State of the Union podcast here in the AskAlexi segment is this. All right, learn it, love it, know it. 657-549-2297. That is 657-549-2297. And you can leave us a message. Now, I recognize that we're opening ourselves up to well, to use the last Ask Alexi question, some jerkiness out there. Have at it. If you feel that you want to take the time and call up and say inappropriate things, by the way, it doesn't mean you can't be critical, but saying inappropriate things, have at it. There's less of a chance that it will, number one, be heard, and even less of a chance that it will ever make air. But do what you got to do. But we'll see how this goes. So that's the number there. You can call up. As I said, you can ask a question. You can leave a comment. You can do whatever you want, and we will go through those things. And if there are things that we feel are, should make air and are appropriate, we will use them. And we'll see how that goes going forward. All right, we're going to take another real quick break. And when we come back, I will have, as always, my one for the road. Okay, we are back, and it's time for my one for the road as we end up this pod. I mentioned earlier in the pod when we were talking about Concacaf Champions League that the Philadelphia Union is the only MLS team left in this tournament. It is headed up by none other than Jim Curtin. And I got a lot of time for Jim Curtin, and congratulations to him and the Philadelphia Union for flying the flag right now of Major League Soccer when it comes to Concacaf Champions League. As you also mentioned, their last matchup was against another MLS team in Atlanta. After that game, Jim Curtin had a lot to say because evidently Gabriel Heinze, the coach of Atlanta United, had not shaken his hand. And after the game, Jim Curtin said this about Gabriel Heinze, quote, "He's a great player and a great coach, but you can still be a sore loser and an asshole after the game." Gabriel Heinze, a couple days later, responded saying, quote, "I say what I feel to someone's face. I don't need the press to send that message." Okay, first off, I'm here for this. I love this smack talk and this back and forth and this performance and this entertainment and this theater. But I love the message that was subtly being sent out by Jim Curtin. And that is this. At least this is the way I look at it. Jim Curtin is a great American and an American soccer hero for doing this, because what I think he was really saying is that there are incredible individuals out there that are incredibly talented, and incredible American talent out there, and domestic talent out there that oftentimes is not given the respect that they are due. And whether it's American players or in this case, American coaches. Last week we talked so much about Jesse Marsch and what he has done and the pathway and the difficulty and the challenge of getting the level of respect that you are due because of, a non-traditional path or a non-traditional resume that you have out there. And, Jim Curtin, like Jesse Marsch, is of that American soccer pathway and upbringing, playing youth soccer, taking the college path, being an MLS player, and now being what I think is one of the great younger American coaches out there. And if Jim Curtin's angry at you, then you've probably done something wrong, because he's also one of the nicest men that you will ever meet. And shake his hand, okay? Not because Jim Curtin says you should shake his hand, but because behind it there is a level of respect. And I know people out there saying, you got to earn respect. I get that. But, we see all of this incredible talent that is being brought in, both in terms of players to Major League Soccer and in terms of coaches. And a lot of it is wonderful. But there's also, I think, when American coaches look at some of the incoming talent, an element of, well, what have they really done? And why are they any better than what exists here? And oftentimes it's a big name, which is, as we've said many, many times, is sexy. It's a resume, especially when it comes to a playing career, that puts them in a different light. There is certainly a natural type of reaction to be bitter and to be resentful and to be jealous. And that's not what I'm saying necessarily Jim Curtin or anybody out there is. But I think there is an element of saying, hold on, there is great talent that exists in the United States. And while we mine and go get that talent from outside, that's all fine and well, as long as we in the process aren't ignoring or passing up some of that talent that could be as good, and in many cases maybe even better, that is sitting in our backyard. And to not recognize that, and I guess more importantly, to not respect that, be it in the form of a simple handshake or something more concrete like opportunities out there, is disrespectful. And I think in our effort to get better is missing out. And so thank you, Jim Curtin, for certainly providing us content and getting us a wonderful moment and narrative and all that kind of stuff. But also in doing so, standing up for yourself and those like you and those that are coming behind you for the opportunities and for ultimately the respect that they deserve, regardless of what their upbringing or their background or their nationality says, and the stereotypes that are out there. All right. That's it. That's the end of our show. We've gone a little longer as we as we seem to be doing, but we covered a lot of stuff for you out there. Mossy, when I was at the Galaxy game, numerous people came up to me, and we were talking, and they mentioned, first off, to say hello to you. They listened to the pod out there, which is great to hear. And as you know, I have not been out in public. It was very surreal just to be around and to take pictures with people, even to shake hands and to try to figure out how we interact or act now in this moment in history, and as we start to come back. But there are a lot of people out there that are listening, and we thank each and every one of you out there for downloading and reviewing and for rating and for subscribing and doing all the different things when it comes to the State of the Union podcast. Mossy, anything to say before we go?
That's it.
All right, we will see you and hear you. Well, you will hear us, and hopefully we'll hear from you again next week. Same time, same place here on the State of the Union podcast. I hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.